Hello everyone, Dennis here. It's very important for me to share with you guys that this is a very passionate topic of mine and especially for my team as well. The private networking. How does it helps with the enterprise of the future? Let me share a little bit here. This is the question actually a lot of enterprise that we engage with is asking. I would like to have private networking, but what does it do for me? So I think with that kind of like constant asking and constant query from our customers, me and my team were really passionate about this and say that, hey, let's us really, deep dive into this and help the enterprise on their journey. Well, first, let me share a little bit here. While we talk about private networking, essentially, we are talking about this capability that brought about by 5G. My journey with 5G started off around 2014 when I was one of the members together working with my, kind of like my CTO in the NGMN, that is the Next Generation Mobile Network Alliance. So why is it important? It is very important because in the past, the 3G and the 4G were actually technology defined by academics, kind of engineers and researchers. And they say that, okay, this is 4G. And then what will happen is that we start to build application on 4G. However, for 5G, it's a little bit different. The MGMN actually made up of 30 over top operators in the world. We talk about it and say that what does the service of the future looks like in the future? We say that we need to build a technology that's going to support that. That's low latency, ultra reliable, massive mission to mission connectivity, high bandwidth, and high assurance. And so then therefore 5G was born, through that concept. So having said that, 5G certainly has been thinking about the future and it's about a service design rather than a technology design. So therefore, bringing me back to these slides, you can see that, for 5G, its capability can bring about very critical use cases that in the past, the wireless technology couldn't support, the like of cloud gaming, autonomous driving, edge video analytics, drones, real-time analysis. These are capabilities that require extremely low latencies and high bandwidth. And that's where the edge compute and 5G can play a very critical part. And that is one of the use case, if you can see, is for the private networking, the network slicing, the service assurance, and what are we going to do with resources and how are we going to make use of these resources to use to able to help us to create the kind of critical what we have an operation requirement. So why are these use cases important? These are use cases like I mentioned, real-time capabilities, drones, AI, VI, AR, VR, and all these things, they are actually use cases and function that is required for driving business. You look at from these slides here, you will realize that there are many industries, many overall use cases that needs all these specific use cases. The business drivers could be real-time financing. We are talking about factory production. We are talking about real-time connected customers. And all this means that the business or the enterprise of the future need to think not just about one use cases, but they need to put everything together. Their overall future business driver must be complete, and then they design what they need. And then therefore, if you look at the right side of the slide here, the enterprise will need the capabilities of predictive, real-time automation, hyperconnectivity, collaboration, and also efficiency. And that's where you need to think. If I need all this, where am I at now? Currently, most of the application and data, they are all silos. We are talking about that, we are a lot of complex dependency. There's still a lot of human dependency involved. And we call real-time visibility is actually quite lacking. So then therefore, we need to know how do we arrive at the end stage that we will need. And how does private network help with this? So we need to think. To adopt it, we need to have the right solution, which is standardization. We need to have being agnostic, and most important, programmable. If you need a service now, you will need to make sure that it is programmable by yourself. It cannot be everything that you need. You send in a request, it will take 3 days later. Someone at the back end will do a program and write it and pass it to you. It need to be programmable. It need to be real time. Interfaces, APIs, these are important. The reason being that all these applications and all this enterprise use case depends not only on just the network. They will need cloud, they need operations, they will need what we call data, and they need to work with other agencies as well. So then therefore standard interface become more important. And one of the other thing we really need to talk about is the ecosystems. What's good if the enterprise have a very good idea, but the entire industry or the ecosystem is not ready to support it? Then what will happen is that the implementation of the solution will be extremely costly. And so therefore, if you take a step back and look at these slides, in the future, the business want to be different. The business want to have real time. The business would like to predict what the customer needs. The business will need to be able to customize services for the customer. Can you imagine in the past when we have a factory, the factory need to set up all the conveyor belts, the production run, the materials and everything. Usually they produce the goods by the hundreds, by the millions. The reason is being the setting up is expensive. There's probably no way you can do a customization, but the business of the future needs customization, a lot of customization. One very good example I can share with you, a personal experience, is that I went to Nike to buy a shoe. I can custom-make the shoe, the colors I want. I can have logos. I can have my name printed on it. And the delivery is probably the same, as I buying a normal off-the-shelf shoes from the e-commerce platform. So as you can see, peoples are changing, customers requirement changes, and enterprise need to have all these business drivers and all these business you call future business requirement, and they are complex, and their needs to have all these capabilities is going to be very, very important. These capabilities that's going to make all these things works from an application perspective is no longer just the network or just the IT system. We need networks, we need edge and the public cloud for storage, for decision making, for low latency application at the edge. We talk about operation and assurance. How do we orchestrate across it? If I add in more endpoints, how do I assure that my bandwidth is automatically increased so that my endpoint services will not be impacted? How about all this point-to-point orchestration, even though they're of different domain? The AI, the data analytics, and the security is equally important. And all this helps the business to be more flexible and can react better to the customer requirement. And like I said earlier, the ecosystem and the application. Without the system, ecosystem and the applications, we are going to have a problem of scale. And so, a few weeks ago, Singtel, we launched Paragon platform. And Paragon platform, to me, is one of the key way that we can help enterprise, especially in terms of the private networks, in terms of the 5G and the MEC. How do we make it possible for the enterprise to adopt 5G, to manage across the different domains of infrastructure, network, operations, and marketplace, or what we call the ecosystem together? Looking at it, first and foremost, the value proposition that we provide is visibility and management. Now, all the devices in the ecosystem are changing. Now, look at it from a production perspective. You have robots, you have what we call analytics camera, you got AGVs. How this device is going to continue to improve and change. The applications that run on these devices, the applications that runs all your system, these are actually very complex and these are always changing. Can you imagine all these devices and all these applications that you got to manage them in a singular silo form, and you try to make every one of them talk together? This is going to be tricky. So in terms of a private networks, in terms of a closed network in a closed system, whereby you are using the connectivities to make your business case or your application works, I think visibility and the management become really important. And that's where I think that, we believe will be very useful to the customers. The second part, which is a performance assurance. As I shared earlier, how would you be able to assure that if I add more endpoints to it, my networks can continue to be supported with the right amount of bandwidth so that the overall performance will be good? In the past, what we're going to do is that we will design every time we add one more endpoint, a network engineer will calculate, okay, this is the amount of bandwidth I need. And then what we will do is that we will send an application form to the operators, and the operator will say, okay, that's how much more, and I'm going to so-called charge you. You say, okay, please go ahead, and then the provision will probably come a few weeks later. Customers in the future will say that anytime I change the infrastructure or I change an application, my orchestration should be end to end. My performance should be assured. If today I say that my factory needs to operate in full force, I don't think that the customer or you want to say that, okay, now I have to work in full force, therefore I ask for more bandwidth. But now, if I'm not working in full force, I would like to pay less for the bandwidth. So performance assurance, both upper end premium performance or lower cost assurance, can be achieved, I think, through this platform. And I believe that this is going to be extremely helpful for the customers as well. And last but not least, in this value that we could talk about that would help the customers will be that the customers are risk averse. Everyone wants to have a resilient application, highly available. We want to make sure that all these services are in the cloud, are in the edge, that can continue to help us to make instant decision, to make instant prediction, forecasting. And this is very important. And this is actually going to help the customers in the sense that we can build critical business application. Therefore, putting it all together, from a management perspective, a management platform perspective, we have this Paragon platform that helps the customers to manage and operate, their services. There's a marketplace for the customer to buy services like facial recognition app, a drone app, etc. Like I said, service orchestration, control ends to end. And we have APIs that's integrated, we have cloud management, and we have the MEC management. I'm not going to delve too much into this, but just one point that I can share with you, that with the MEC and the 5G coming together, one very value added advantage over here is that the device at the end can now be what we call much lighter. Let me share an example. In some of the car parks in Singapore, you can see big, heavy cameras. Not so sure what they do, but you can see that they're all big. They have a lot of compute, they have a lot of storage. All this will be expensive because of the compute that's sitting inside there. Can you imagine that now all these compute are at the edge? Then therefore, your camera could be a very lightweight, simple camera. Because of the latency provided by 5G, once, even though the compute is done at the edge, the latency and the performance of the camera function will not be diminished. So I think that is very important, and that helps actually in a few things. Number one, truck roll. You don't have to go to that site to upgrade the camera. You don't have to worry about the camera being damaged because it's expensive. And you can see that with this, it actually helps to manage application at the edge. You can change the application at the edge onto the camera, and the camera become multifunctional. So if looking at this, we believe that enterprise of the future, to make best use of the 5G networks and to have a new business use cases into the future, they do not just need the network. They need whole host of things, like I mentioned earlier, the cloud, the MEC, the platforms, the marketplace. And that's where we believe that something like a platform that can help the enterprise will be very, very important for them to adopt the networks and to make sure that they are ready for the future. So I think what we have done is that we have done a very quick check, and then we do a very quick what we call a comparison. You can see that changing the profile of a SIM in the past could be a few days. Now we are talking about a few minutes. We are talking about customers in the past who have to call the support team, check the backend. It's going to be months, but now we can have the customer doing self-serve, and you can do things in 1 or 2 hours. Customers looking for solution, it could be weeks, but now you can discover and try and do it in 10 15 minutes or even an hour. And therefore we can see that all these improvement help the enterprise to operate business in a much easier way. But let's take a step back. For the enterprise, like I said, need to understand that a lot of use cases that we are doing now is actually pretty much sport in the sense that we are serving sport capabilities. We need to look at it from a wider perspective. How do we actually get the whole motion together and say that let's apply the use cases to many parts of the factory? You do not just deploy a network, 5G network with the MEC for video analytics. You need to think of it as a wider part of things. So then therefore, in order for an enterprise to do all this, the ecosystem, the solutionings, the idea all come together. In this case, looking at private network, it certainly gives quite a fair bit of what we call capabilities. With Paragon, it gives you the ability to manage it. And then for us, we have also willingly, probably putting up quite a fair bit of program for our customers, enterprise customer, to come to share with us. And we have industrial, kind of experts that's actually helping us to work with enterprise in the different industry. How do we adopt 5G across, not just singular use case? So with that, I think that, with the private network, with 5G, with MEC coming, I believe that we have opened up a vast opportunity for enterprise to be able to run business case, run use cases that is going to help them to move to the future. And so with that, I encourage you to come speak to us about how we can help you and how we can actually make sure that you are readily having all the capabilities and all the platforms to help you to implement the private networks, network slicing, the MECs, the low latency application. And I believe that this is something going to be very interesting and very exciting for our future. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank you for having me here. You know, there are quite a fair bit of things I could go on talking for hours, but in view of time, I'm going to stop here. And I hope that you guys have an insightful time. And please don't hesitate to give us your feedback and or contact us if you need more information. Thank you very much. And before you go, I would like you to participate in our short survey. Please scan the QR code and give us your feedback, and we greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.